Welcome to the Talk Spot. This is Marcus, and today I'm joined by Harrison Faigen, the editor-in-chief at Silver Screen and Roll. Harrison, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. I've been doing a lot of these over the last couple of days because all of a sudden with the Anthony Davis news, everybody is interested in the Lakers. So it's been pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, I even saw for your guys' I follow you guys on Twitter, and I saw you guys switched out your profile pic of Anthony Davis in a Lakers jersey. Yeah, so I guess one of the first questions that I have is, what would you trade for Anthony Davis? Like, what's actually a fair trade? Because some of these, talking heads on TV, they're saying things like, we should trade away literally everything, Zubac, Ingram, Hard, Ball, Kuzma, I think Jason McIntyre said 7 first-round picks or something like that, plus all those players. I guess what do you think is a fair compensation for Anthony Davis, knowing what we know about him, the fact that, almost essentially LeBron James is his agent. They've already kind of put out the feelers that he's not going to re-sign anywhere else. Yeah, I guess what do you think is actually a fair trade for him?
Yeah, so 7 first-round picks, that's actually the first time I've heard that. I don't even know if you're allowed to trade that many in success. I think I'm not 100% on this, but I think the most you can trade is 4. But I'm not 100% on that. I'm not a CBA expert. But I do think that the Lakers should be looking to give up pretty much everything in an Anthony Davis deal. I think this is finally the guy. This is finally the guy where you go all out and you're willing to give everything up. Like we saw the Lakers kind of play things cute with Paul George and with Kawhi Leonard a little bit. And I think both of those, the Pacers and the Spurs were probably both asking the Lakers to basically pay a premium because both of those guys wanted to be in LA and they didn't want to give them what they wanted or deal with the Lakers because of that, because there was some resentment. I think the Pelicans seem to have that same thing going on, but Anthony Davis is the type of player where he's so good that you can't take any chances. Even Kawhi Leonard has probably shown himself this year to be a better player still than Anthony Davis, but there were a lot of questions about his health, and there still are some questions about his health going forward. Anthony Davis has had some injuries and stuff, but it's never anything that makes you think that he's he's on the verge of falling apart or anything like that. And I'm not saying Kawhi Leonard's on the verge of falling apart, but Anthony Davis is 25. He would extend your window and allow you to eventually have LeBron kind of take a back seat and shift into a more secondary role as a secondary star because Anthony Davis is so special. And I think this is finally the guy. Everybody wants the Lakers, or not everybody. There are a lot of very vocal fans in my mentions on Twitter that want the Lakers to keep this young core together and talking about don't give away the future. Don't give away the future. Anthony Davis is the future. Anthony Davis is the type of player that we say that you save up those assets for, and you make sure that and you keep those assets around to deal for. Obviously you hope those guys become good players, and that's why you drafted them. But at some point, you're drafting guys, if you draft this many guys and a superstar gets on the table, you're drafting them to trade for a generational superstar like Anthony Davis.
I think something too that people might not realize is the fact that Davis is a year and a half older than Kuzma, and he's a year-ish older than Josh Hart, right? Because what is Kuzma? Is Kuzma 23 or 24 almost?
I think Kuzma is 23. I believe he's 23. I think I looked this up the other day. He's 23 years old.
Okay, and isn't Josh Hart, is he almost 24, or is he also just 23?
I think Josh Hart, I felt like he was older than Kuzma, but maybe he is also he's only 23, but his birthday's March 6th, so he will be 24.
Yeah, so I think that's something also people should maybe take into account is that Anthony Davis, because he's been so great from the get-go, it feels like he's 30, when in reality, yeah, he's only 25 years old, like you mentioned. I mean, he's not, it's one thing when, you look at somebody even like Klay Thompson. I looked him up the other night, and I was like, man, this guy turns 29 in a couple months. I mean, it seems like, especially today in the NBA, it seems like players outside of LeBron James, it doesn't seem like they're really being great into their 30s. I was really thinking about it. I mean, even if you look at the All-Star voting this year, I mean, how many All-Stars this year are older than 31? I mean, aren't the oldest All-Stars LeBron, Curry, and Durant?
Yeah, I think some of that is just you're seeing a lot of like that players that were in LeBron's generation start to age out of the league, and there are only so many super. It's not like like the 2003 draft is obviously an exception, but most of the time you get like one superstar per year, if that. And so these guys are spread out across an age range, and so we're seeing a lot of those guys that were part of that prior generation start to age out. And so I think you are seeing some younger all-stars. I don't know if that's necessarily indicative that like all of a sudden players aren't going to be able to last. I think with the advantages and like the advances that we've had in medical science for NBA players, I think that we're going to see guys honestly start to have even longer careers. And you're seeing that on some level with LeBron, who's like at age 34. And before, obviously the groin injury is a big thing, but before that, like you were almost seeing like no drop off. Like obviously he's been taking it a little easier on defense over the last couple of years than he has for most of his career. But offensively, like he had the best offensive year of his career last year for the Cavaliers. And so like, I think with like the advances in performance science and all of that stuff, you're just going to continue to see these guys, like, I think last even longer, honestly.
So I want to ask you a series of just kind of shorter questions. So you mentioned the fact that people on your Twitter are saying, let's not get rid of the entire young core. So I want to just kind of go through some of these players in the young core, and you just tell me what you think is a realistic ceiling for that player. All right, so let's say a player like Lonzo Ball. Where do you see him being in his absolute prime?
That's a good question. I'm not sure that I see. I think All-Star is possible for him. I just think that it's going to take a little bit more scoring coming around for people to notice, like, everything that he brings to the table. But I do think, and I've talked about this in a lot of places. People have probably heard me talk about this in places, but like, I think Lonzo is exactly the type of guy that you want like on a team with ball dominant superstars, because he does so many other things like well outside of scoring. He doesn't need to do that. He keeps the ball moving, and he's a standout defender. He's a good playmaker. He's like unselfish, and he really he makes sure to push pace and all of that stuff. So I could see Lonzo as an all-star, although I think it's a little up in the air right now just because of, he's been dealing with injuries his first 2 years, and it'll partially depend on which market he ends up in and how they develop him. And if he ends up staying with the Lakers, or if he ends up cause we saw he was like 8th in our all-star fan voting this year as a second year player who, at this point does not deserve to be an all-star, but like the Lakers effect is real. So if he remains on the Lakers moving forward, then an all-star, like he'll probably hit that at some point, partially through the fan vote, but I think some of that is going to depend on where he goes next and how they develop him.
Let's say on a championship level team, do you think it's possible that Lonzo could be the second best player on a championship contender? Like a realistic championship contender? Like if you were to...
I'm not sure. I'm probably as high on Lonzo as anyone, and I'm not sure that I'm quite there yet. I did think like early on last year, I thought that was probably possible for him. I'm not sure. Like he's taken a little bit of a leap forward this year, but I would have to see a little bit more to be sure of that, because right now, like that's not necessarily even an indictment of Lonzo. Like we're seeing that to be the second best player on a championship team, you have to be like better than ever almost, because teams are so loaded, the actual teams that are winning titles. And so like to say that Lonzo, probably his ceiling is like third best player on a championship team or fourth best player is not really like an insult or like an indication that I think that he's not good. It's just that like I think the bar for being the second or third best player on a championship team is higher than it's ever been, because the league's so talented and we're having so many super teams and things like that.
No, I think that's a very fair and measured response. I mean, there's something about Lonzo. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm incredibly high on Lonzo Ball too, but I'll ask you another player. How about Brandon Ingram? Obviously last night he has a career high in scoring. Now granted, the Lakers lose that game last night to Philadelphia, and they also play like absolute garbage in the first quarter. But where do you see Brandon Ingram? Let's say it's 2024, let's say 5 years from now. I guess what's the best case scenario for him? Like what does he look like, I guess, in 5 years from now?
Yeah, you picked a great day to ask that after he went out and dropped his career high on Philadelphia last night. I think Brandon Ingram, I am still, despite his, can we call them heroics? I get when they got blown out anyway. I don't know if it's heroics, but despite his very strong game last night, and really the fact that he was the only good thing for the Lakers in that game against the Sixers. So like, it's not his fault they lost. It's just that the Lakers aren't equipped to survive without Lonzo Ball, LeBron James, and Kyle Kuzma. But Brandon Ingram, I'm still lower on him than Ball long term. I think that he could be a good player on a good team, but I think he's somewhere like your third to fourth best player, like on a general, like decent NBA team. And a lot of that is going to depend on how he continues to develop as a defender. He's made a lot of strides in that area already, but how much does that continue to grow for him with those long arms and the potential that he has there? And then also, how willing is he to accept what is going to be the NBA role where he can have the most team success? Because I think that Brandon Ingram, obviously, there's always this push and pull with young players, right? Where they're trying to get them, they're trying to hit their individual maximum potential. And a lot of the guys, they've been the best scorer on every team that they've been on since they came into the NBA. So they feel like scoring is the thing that they do well, and they have to do more of that to really reach their peak. Whereas for a guy like Ingram, we saw it last night. He put the whole package on display. He scored 36 points. His shot was on. He can be a good scorer. But I don't know that I've seen enough from him to think that he's ever going to be one of those all-league scorers that's the leading scorer on a good team. So how much does he continue to develop the other parts of his game where he's really good as a secondary attacker, or he's really good at doing things off of the ball, or he's becomes a good three-point shooter so that he can space the floor and then attack when defenses close out hard off of a better player's driving kick and things like that, and make little plays when he gets to the basket and things like that. And so I think that Ingram, a lot of where his ceiling ultimately is going to depend on kind of the player that he chooses to develop himself into, because Magic Johnson has talked before about I want to see you average 20 points a game, or I'm going to be disappointed and things like that. And so he's been coached and he's been told by people in the organization that you need to be this scorer. And then all of a sudden LeBron James comes in and he's struggled to find kind of his footing and what is he outside of that. So if he can figure that out, I still think that he can be a strong contributor to a good team at some point, but it's not totally clear that he's made that leap yet. And scoring 36 without LeBron, obviously doesn't tell us anything about that.
No, I mean, I feel like watching Ingram too, there's something about it when watching him play that I feel like he's not playing, it's almost like the way he's playing, the style of play that he's actually doing on the court, it doesn't seem like that's actually the best for him personally. I mean, you watch him play and you watch him take all these mid-range to take sometimes, and I just feel like if you put him in the right system on the right team, I feel like he can really blossom. I feel like, in my personal opinion, if there was some way to hold on to Lonzo Ball and, we somehow trade for Anthony Davis and obviously keep LeBron James, I feel like I can envision a scenario in which Lonzo Ball really flourishes and does really well. But I feel like with Ingram, I just can't envision a scenario in which he actually blossoms next to LeBron James on this Lakers team. I really like Ingram a lot, but I don't know. I can't see it happening.
Yeah, I'm actually of a like mind on that. I think that it's much, much easier to see Lonzo Ball, his role on a good championship team, than it is to see, Brandon Ingram fitting in with LeBron and all that stuff based on what we've seen this year. Because we've really only seen Ingram play well when LeBron was off the floor, even early in the year when they were both healthy. And then Ingram, outside of last night, has in a lot of ways struggled since LeBron went down, which makes you think okay, he's not this guy that you can center your doesn't fit with LeBron. Where does that leave him? That's left a lot of questions about him. And again, I always urge people, you can't give up on young players too early. I was looking at this last night. I was editing a feature on Tobias Harris that'll be out on an SB Nation site soon. And the Magic at one point, that Nikola Vucevic has blossomed for them, and they also had Tobias Harris, they had Victor Oladipo. The Magic had a lot of these young guys that are kind of blowing up around the league now. Tobias Harris is having the best year of his career. He's a fringe all-star. Victor Oladipo, before his injury, was 100% going to be an all-star, and so or he was on that level. And so you can't. It's hard, to give up on these guys too early when it's not in a deal for Anthony Davis, but I think it is easier to see Lonzo's role, like his progression path to being a good player on a team with LeBron.
All right, so just two more then. We'll just do Zubac or Zubac. I don't know. I've never really actually said his name.
It's Zubac.
Okay.
It's like robots, but with a zoo in front of it.
Okay. So how about him and Kuzma? Where did they land? Because I feel like with Kuzma, again, you listen to these talking heads, and I listen to them a lot, the Stephen A. Smiths of the world and Colin Cowherd and, Skip Bayless and things like that, or people like that. And I don't know, they sometimes will talk about Kuzma. I know Stephen A. Smith had a quote. It was something like, you have to hold on to Kuzma for dear life, something like that. But obviously in his really, over the top way of shouting, talking.
Yeah.
I feel like with Kuzma, I very much like him. I think he's a good player. And I think, if you somehow had a starting lineup of, Davis, LeBron, I don't know, you have like a center out there. I feel like Kuzma could be on the court on a championship level contending team with LeBron and Davis, because sometimes he can get so hot and he can just make, he can just score so much. And I feel like, okay, there's something here, but I feel like, is he a little overrated? Is he actually, is he the kind of guy that puts up big numbers on a bad team? Is that kind of where he is? I mean, is he a player that could actually average, 19 points on an actually really good team? I don't know. Am I being too pessimistic about him?
No, I think there's some there that I agree with. There's some there that I don't think that he's a good stats, bad team kind of guy. He was that guy last year for sure. He was like a pretty good stats on a bad team guy. But when you're a young player, you aren't really a good stats, bad team guy. You're just like on a young team that isn't very good and you're putting up good stats. And I think there is a distinction there. Like Monte Ellis was a good stats, bad team kind of guy. That's not where I'm putting Kyle Kuzma yet. I think Kyle Kuzma I agree with you in that he's overrated. I do think that because he does a lot of things that are very easy to pick up on for anyone watching a basketball game. He scores well, mainly. He acts like Kobe Bryant a little bit. And so those are things that casual fans are going to, and it looks very pretty. A lot of his shot is very, very fundamentally sound. It looks good for the most part. When he's scoring, it is beautiful to watch. And so it's something that is going to jump off of the screen at you when you're watching. And so if you're one of these national guys that watches 5 Lakers games a year and then the rest of the time just checks box scores, you're going to think Kuzma's easily the best young player. And I think for much of this year, I have to put my hand up and say, I was a little down on Kuzma coming into the year. I thought he'd be the worst fit of any of the young guys with LeBron. And he has shown me this year that he actually was pretty much the most seamless fit of all the guys with LeBron. And that's why I think that ultimately he could be a guy that is putting up good stats on a good team, because he showed such an ability. Out of all the young guys, he showed the most ability to kind of thrive eventually. It took him a couple games because the Lakers were playing him as a backup center to start the year, and he was taxing himself so much on defense that his shot was just gone, and he wasn't really able to affect the game. But once they shifted him into his more traditional power forward role, and Luke actually made the pretty smart decision of having him chase guys around screens, because he realized that it engages Kuzma more defensively and it kind of minimizes some of his weaknesses there. He was the most seamless fit alongside LeBron because he was being put in a position to succeed. And he's the type of guy that I always say this, he's not Klay Thompson. I'm not going to compare him to in a serious way to Klay Thompson, but he is like Klay Thompson in the way that he can get really, really hot and make an impact on a game without dribbling, without touching the ball for a whole lot of time, and that kind of thing. Again, he's not Klay Thompson. That's not what I'm saying. But I do think that he can impact the game in a similar way sometimes, in that he's a guy that doesn't need the ball a whole lot and can create space for LeBron and also just get really hot off of these secondary possessions. And that's what you want. The difference between Kuzma and Ingram this year, I think ultimately Ingram in a vacuum would probably be if you just put him on any NBA team, if you take fast forward 5 years, down the line, I think Ingram is more likely to be a guy that would be easier to run an entire offense around. But Kuzma is the guy right now, to me, that you'd want more on a good team that already has established scorers, just because he's shown an ability to fit in that way. But again, I do think that he's underrated. I feel like there's this prevailing idea among a lot of the national media and some more casual people that he is the best player among the Lakers' young core. And honestly, to me, it's Lonzo, and it's not really close. But then even after that, I'd probably still put Ingram, just because, like, I think Kuzma kind of, like, I'm not going to say he is what he is, because he'll get better at the things that he does. But Kuzma, to me, is like, he's basically the type of NBA player that he's going to be.
No, that totally makes sense. Yeah, because, I mean, yeah, like, I think sometimes, too, some of these national talking heads, you know, they might not consider the fact that Kuzma is, you know, he's the oldest of the young core, or at least between Ingram and Ball. I mean, Ball and Ingram, they just turned 21. What was it, like 4 months ago and 3 months ago, something like that?
Yeah, they both turned 21 this season. They're both still 20. They only both can just legally drink.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, you know, yeah, I mean, you have to kind of, I mean, there has to be a little bit of that expectation of, okay, you know, these guys aren't absolute finished products, I mean, in my opinion. But so I'll ask you, so what would you consider, like, I guess, for the Davis trade, if the Lakers are going to make it? How would that trade look if the Lakers, like, what's the best case scenario, I guess, in that trade for Davis? Like, who do the Lakers hold on to that you look at that and say, okay, that's a really great trade for the Lakers? I guess, yeah, if the Lakers are going to, quote, win that trade, what would that look like? Who would we give up and who would we keep? And you look at that and you're like, wow, I can't believe we made the trade, but, you know, we somehow kept, you know, blank player.
Well, to me, the Lakers are going to win that trade just if they make that trade. So, like, I think it is like a little bit of like, because you're getting Anthony Davis back. So, like, I think you win that trade. But, like, if the question is, like, how do the Lakers fleece the Pelicans, then to me, it's that. Them. Yeah, I think, well, because, you know, you agree with that, right? Like, the Lakers, like, it's unlikely that they lose this trade, right?
I agree with you, yeah. But let's say we're fleecing them. Let's say we're doing the...
Yeah, so let's say...
Yeah.
We're going out and we're going to try and fleece New Orleans. Then, like, I think I think as long as you keep Lonzo in that deal, then to me, that's like, okay, the Pelicans, like, and again, I'm not an NBA GM and there's a reason for that. So I could be wrong on this, but like, it seems like if you could keep Lonzo and you like literally open up the cupboards and give up anything else, like anything else in your entire coffers and trade it all for Anthony Davis. But if you could keep Lonzo, then all of a sudden you have a guy that has the most kind of boom potential among this core to me. And the guy who is probably going to have the most utility on a team with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, because like even Kyle Kuzma, like his effectiveness, like, yeah, he's been great, like, and like he's fit well with LeBron, but like how much is his effectiveness minimized on a team with LeBron and Anthony Davis? Because like even with the stuff said about him being able to affect the game by scoring, you know, like without without touching the ball a whole lot, like he's ultimately pretty much just the power forward. He can play a little bit of small forward, and I know positions are kind of like out of date, but you have to be able to guard someone. And so on a team with Anthony Davis, where the Lakers, there's no way that with Davis's injury history that you're going to make him a full-time center. He'll play some center, but you're not going to make him a full-time center. LeBron is going to have to play more and more power forward, and we were already seeing that as his career, like this year. And he's going to have to play it more as his career advances because he's going to get older. He's going to like, you know, how much is LeBron losing a step sounds like a hot take, like not losing a step in the sense of he's going to be bad, but losing a step in it is harder for him to beat small forwards off the dribble, but still very, very easy for him to beat power forwards off the dribble because he's like Karl Malone with a handle. But like Kuzma, you know, where are the minutes for him on that team? Like, I think he'd still play for sure, but I think it would be harder for him to make an impact. Whereas like Lonzo Ball is all of a sudden, if you've traded away all your depth, you have a pretty big hole at point guard. And all of a sudden you have two ball dominant stars that need the ball a whole lot, need somebody to kind of keep it moving throughout the offense. And like Lonzo Ball to me is the perfect guy to do that. So if you want to completely 100%, like not just win this trade, but like dunk on the Pelicans, then it's keeping Lonzo. Although by all reports, they seem to value Lonzo most out of all the Lakers' young core. So I think that's kind of, it'll be interesting to see how much his camp's leaking and like saying that he doesn't want to be in New Orleans is going to affect his trade value and like where he ends up going in this trade, if he ends up going at all.
Could you foresee a scenario in which Lonzo Ball's camp lets out a news story, something along the lines of, oh, like Lonzo's injury is going to take longer for him to heal from or something like that or recover from. Because I remember in the summer, especially when the Kawhi Leonard rumors were really picking
Yeah,
up.
I was going to say.
Yeah, I remember hearing that.
I was going to say, yeah, I don't have to imagine a world. This is a world where they have already done this. And so I think it's very possible that we hear something about that before the trade deadline. I've actually been waiting for the Lonzo Ball, actually the ankle's a little worse than we think report, but I think maybe they'll wait until the talks heat up a little bit more to drop that one.
So does this Davis trade, does it happen this season, do you think? Like does Davis actually get moved, before, I think, what is the trade deadline? Is it February 7th or 6th? I mean,
it's February 7th.
Does it happen before then, or do you think he stays a Pelican for the remainder of the season?
I've been asked this on like a lot of places lately, and like I go back and forth in my head, but I think I've been leaning towards no, it doesn't happen, because you have a clearly very upset Pelicans organization that has asked the league to look into tampering against the Lakers. And then there was a report this morning from ESPN that Dell Demps won't even pick up the phone for the Lakers right now. That's not great if you're trying to get a deal done. And what do we have? 8 days before the trade deadline? I'm not great. Yeah. About 8 days before the trade deadline. That's not ideal, right? And we see deadline deals get done all the time where it's 2 minutes, literally 2 minutes before the league office says, okay, no more trade calls. We've seen that happen before where deals are agreed to right then, but you're just giving yourself less and less time. And for a negotiation where the Pelicans are going to be would be giving away probably the best player in their franchise history, that's not great. You need that time to negotiate and kind of get past whatever little hangups that you're going to hit in this deal. And then there's also, you have the Boston Celtics calling the Pelicans and saying wait till this summer, we'll give you everything you want. And they could potentially outbid the Lakers. You have the Knicks potentially willing to offer up what could be the number one pick, although it's not drafts in years past where that's as much of a certainty. So I think there's a lot of complications here. And especially when you factor in that the Pelicans are angry enough that they're trying to get the league to look into tampering stuff. I don't know that. I think that's going to hold this up a little bit. And I think I lean towards the deal probably doesn't get done in time.
So obviously there's been the reports that now that Klay Thompson and also Kyrie Irving are interested in maybe joining the Lakers. I mean, I just feel like every big player, they're attached to the Lakers in some way. Do you, in a realistic scenario, let's say this summer coming up, we make this huge trade for Anthony Davis or whatever, who, I guess, which star do you think is most likely to actually be the third star to come in, to that Anthony Davis, LeBron James duo? I mean, do you think the Lakers will actually get a third player? I mean, is it possible that we do get, a Klay Thompson or Kyrie or maybe even Kawhi Leonard or, let's just say maybe even Kevin Durant? I mean, are any of those players actually possible, or is it just their agents are just pushing that idea, and the media is oh, wow, wouldn't that be crazy if it happened?
Well, so a couple things on this. I think the Klay thing, I don't know who Klay's agent is off the top of my head, but the Klay thing to me read pretty transparently as an agent trying to make sure that the Warriors don't mess around and get cute and just give his client the max. It's oh, if you don't give him the max, Anthony Davis, LeBron, the Lakers, his hometown, that's going to be nice. I don't know. Until we start to hear more about that, to me, that seems like a lot of smoke. If I was going to guess the guy that was most likely to come in as a third star in this, in the theoretical Anthony Davis, LeBron James thing, then it would be Kyrie, just because it seems like there's been all these public kind of connections between him and LeBron, pretty blatant public connections over the last couple of months. And so to me, that one would seem to be the most likely, because we've heard enough from Kevin Durant and Kawhi to make it seem like maybe they aren't the most interested in playing with LeBron. And so, but then the other question too is if the Lakers complete a deal for Anthony Davis, the most cap space that it really looks like they could have is $30 million, which is still short of Kyrie's max, and it's still short of KD's max and Kawhi's max and all that stuff. So if you're having to ask, and it's not that much short, it's $2.4 million, but California has a pretty, one of the higher income tax rates in the NBA. And so for Klay, that wouldn't make a difference, because he'd be turning down money from Golden State, so it would make a difference, but the tax rate's the same whether or not he stays there. Regardless, all of these guys, you'd be having to ask to take pay cuts to come in and be the third star in this Anthony Davis LeBron thing. And Are they interested in doing that? Maybe. Like we know Anthony Davis is interested in turning down money because he just turned down like I think like 80 million from the 80 million extra from the Pelicans, and like that's not a real number because the Pelicans can give him an extra fifth year and whatever. Like there's context there, but like if you're willing to give up a guaranteed $80 million to leave somewhere, you're pretty willing to leave that place. And like, I don't know how much of pay cuts these guys are going to be willing to take to join on. And like, maybe some of them are, but it remains to be seen on that. We've seen a lot more guys not trying to take pay cuts over the last several years in the NBA.
So you think Kyrie? I mean, it's such a crazy idea that. I mean,
yeah, if it was Anthony Davis and LeBron, like we're just saying in this world, like those two guys end up on the same team by the trade deadline, then my guess would be that Kyrie is the third star that joins them. If we're saying like who's the most likely third star.
Do you think that Kawhi Leonard to the Lakers? Do you think that's 100% dead? Because I know there's been all these reports that say, "Oh, the Clippers."
No, I don't. I don't think anything's ever 100% dead, but I do think that it's probably less likely than it seemed like before LeBron came. It just seems like those guys, like just from like all the whispers and whatever that we get like publicly, just are not super interested in playing with each other. I will say the other thing on the Kyrie thing, like the Lakers need to, if he takes a pay cut and leaves the Celtics and basically makes it so that they can't get Anthony Davis and then comes to the Lakers, like Kyrie deserves a statue in front of Staples Center, like before he plays a game. Like before LeBron, before Anthony Davis, like you got to put a statue of Kyrie Irving just dictating trade terms on his phone outside of Staples Center.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. If Kyrie does that, it would be the ultimate screw over job of the Celtics. I've actually thought about this. I'm like, okay, let's say if that was the scenario, right? Lakers trade for Anthony Davis and then Kyrie Irving comes to the Lakers. I mean, what would the Celtics really have left at that point? I mean, I know they would have Tatum and Brown, but I was thinking, I'm like, well, Gordon Hayward, God only knows what's going to happen with him, if he's actually going to turn into what he used to be or not. You know, Al Horford's getting older, and I believe he's an unrestricted free agent. I mean, I'm just thinking about all these players. Like, I don't even know who the point guard would be for the Celtics. I guess Terry Rozier, but like, isn't he a restricted free agent? So they might have to vastly overpay to keep him. I mean, if Kyrie left the Celtics and the Lakers traded for Davis, I mean, that would really set the Celtics back a while, and I'd love it because I think if the Celtics would continue to be in their perpetual, very, very promising rebuild, as it's phrased in the media, like where, like, look at all these future assets they have. Like, in my opinion, like the Celtics have assets for sure. There's no doubting about that. I'm not going to say that they don't. But Danny Ainge has built the best pyramid scheme in the league, where he like constantly has these like future assets. Yeah, he constantly has these future things where he gets like, you know, he gets all of like his buddies in the media that he relentlessly leaks to just be like, oh, look at the Celtics promising treasure trove of assets, and oh man, Danny Ainge really set them up for the future, and da 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 da. Like if you just keep, if your deadline is the future, like constantly for years and years and years, your deadline is that you, or like your end result is that you have a very promising future, then you can stay employed forever because it always looks like there's hope coming down the pipeline. Like you can always sell hope in the NBA and like a promising rebuild. And so, I mean, like the Celtics would be okay, but yeah, they would really be also kind of screwed over because like, yeah, imagine if Kyrie left and then they have like a seemingly broken down Gordon Hayward. They have an aging by the day Al Horford. Terry Rozier is your starting point guard, and then you have like Jayson Tatum, who I think is like incredibly overrated by the bat. Like I think he's a good player. I just think like if we're gonna call Kyle Kuzma overrated, like man, Jayson Tatum, people talk about him like he's an all-star already. Dude is shooting like I think like 55% true shooting percentage this year. Like he's a very promising 20-year-old, but like people need to cool it on like the future star talk, at least to me. And yeah, I mean the Celtics would be completely like kind of shafted if if all that happened and like they would have went from, you know, like we have all this stuff. Eventually you have to turn the stuff into something. And the Celtics, I feel like we've talked about them having stuff for like 7 years. And, you know, like at some point you got to turn that into something. And I don't know that we've seen that from them yet. Yeah. I mean, I think you raise a very good point with Tatum that, yeah, I mean, I've heard, you know, again, some of these talking heads will just throw out, oh, Tatum is vastly better than any of the Lakers' young core. And I think to myself, I mean, you look at a stat sheet, now granted, you know, maybe not the most advanced analytics, but, you know, you look at a stat sheet and it's like, is Jayson Tatum really all that demonstrably better than Ingram and Kuzma? I mean, is the gap between him to them? I mean, it seems like
There's a gap. I don't want to sound like a complete homer. There's a gap. He's been better. Like he's had more of a body of work, and he's succeeded in the playoffs, which is not nothing. But I'm with you. Like I don't think that the gap is as bad. It's not the Grand Canyon like people make it out to be.
yeah, exactly. That's what I was gonna say. I mean, some people in the media they just make it seem like, oh wow, that it's like the grand. I mean, Tatum. They make it sound like Tatum is as much better than Ingram and Kuzma as Jimmy Butler is than Tatum, or even a guy like Bill Simmons. I've listened to him.
Yeah,
talk.
exactly. No, I know what you mean. It's like the way that, and some of that is like an East Coast thing, right? Because so much of this national media is on the East Coast, and so they get to see Tatum a lot more than they're like, I don't want to stay up till like 10 o'clock and watch the Lakers young guys. Come on, like I'm gonna watch like the most promising young play. And some of this is confirmation bias. Tatum, like first impressions. Like you read about this a lot in psychology stuff. Like first impression, our human brains are very dumb in that like whatever we remember most, like first impression wise, is like generally going to be our impression for a long time. And it takes a lot to break out of that. There are tons of studies on this. And so like the first impression of Jayson Tatum was, holy crap, this guy's like really good right off the bat. And he was last year. He was like really, really good for a rookie. And so he has that label stuck on him. Whereas Ingram was like mostly pretty bad for his rookie year. And then like he had promising flashes at the end, but he was mostly pretty bad for his rookie year. Lonzo, couldn't shoot like where I think he started his career with like the worst shooting percentage of like any NBA player in like the last like maybe ever. Like I think there was like some significant shooting stat for his start of his rookie season over like the first 20 games or so. It was really bad. And like he did other things very well, but like people a lot of the time are very prone to just noticing the shooting, and the shooting is the easiest thing to pick up in the box score. And so I think that like you have these like bust labels attached to these guys immediately. And it's the same reason why you see people saying that Kuzma is the best member of the Lakers young core, because he, relative to expectations for him as the 27th pick in last year's draft, outperformed them. Whereas Ball was sold by his dad as like, he's going to lead the Lakers to the playoffs in year one. My boy's going to be the best player in the NBA, all that stuff. Like, and then Ball shockingly did not live up to that. And then Ingram, same thing. He was taken with the second overall pick. Like expectations play into this stuff. And Jayson Tatum had an awful summer league. People don't remember that now, but like that was where the bar started for him. Was it looked like he was going to struggle right off the bat, and then all of a sudden he was killing it against regular NBA players. And so like I think that these first impressions play a lot into this, and that's kind of always how I felt.
I like the point that you raised about the fact that the Celtics Trevor Trove really isn't. It's a little underwhelming this year. Like I heard Nick Wright describe it yesterday. He was saying that the Celtics this year, they're not going to have, the Clippers pick and the Grizzlies pick, I believe. Because I think the Clippers pick, what is it?
Yeah, I think there's protections on those. Like, I think the Grizzlies is top 8. I forget what the Clippers is, but they're pretty significant protections on them.
Because I remember him describing, he was like, there's a very realistic possibility that the Celtics will only have their own draft pick this year and the Kings draft pick. And, I can't exactly remember where the Kings, where their standing is altogether in the NBA, but I think, what are they, probably like the 10th? They'd probably get like around the 10th-ish pick in the draft if the draft was today.
Yeah, it's like 10th to 14th or something. And like the thing about this draft is not considered deep by experts. Like it's like I saw people debating online last night that like getting the dreaded second pick because it's like you don't get Zion, and then you have to pick somebody probably too high, like higher than they would go in a normal draft. So like, yeah, this is not the deepest draft. I still think that the Celtics ultimately, like if you're factoring in, like Marcus Smart and Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown and all those things, like if they're really willing to pony up and push all their chips to the table and like push future chips to the table, they have more to offer in a vacuum probably than the Lakers do. But I don't think that again, it's like we were talking about with like Tatum and Kuzma and Ingram and all that stuff. Like it's not Grand Canyon vast. It's just probably, it's vast, and it's probably enough like for the Pelicans, who are very clearly upset with the Lakers, to, if the two deals are relatively equal, they're probably going to take the Boston Celtics deal, even if and that's just if they're equal, much less if Boston's is a little better. Like I think that the way that Davis could really get to the Lakers is he's going to have to come out and like Rich Paul is going to have to earn his percentage fee by just like doing work behind the scenes and trying to scare the Celtics and the Knicks and whatever off.
Yeah, because haven't there been reports that the Celtics won't trade for Davis as long as he doesn't say that he'll commit to them long term? I thought I've seen
There was a report yesterday, actually, that said the opposite, that like Ainge was willing to go all in for Davis regardless. But that's exactly the type of thing that you'd leak right now while you're trying to get the Pelicans to not trade him to the Lakers. Mm-hmm. And like, who does anybody trust Danny Ainge with his history of trades? Like, come on.
No, and I feel like you guys have tweeted about that, and I've seen it before. That, yeah, I mean, do you guys? Yeah, does anybody actually trust that? And I mean, if you're Davis, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if Kyrie Irving, if it's a real thing that Kyrie either goes to the Lakers or the Knicks or he goes to the Nets, wherever he ends up going, I mean, it seems like there's a very real possibility that he actually leaves the Celtics. And if he leaves the Celtics, I mean, I don't really know what a Davis team is on the Celtics, in which they've traded away everything for him anyways. I mean, if you have a Celtics team of Horford, Hayward, and Davis, I mean, what does that get you? I mean, does that get you?
The other thing that you have to factor in here that's probably somewhat a human factor is like Danny Ainge went on the radio about a month ago and compared LeBron James to Donald Trump. Like, you know who LeBron James is? Like, one of his childhood best friends and like the best business partners is like Rich Paul. And ultimately, Anthony Davis is going to make his own decision. But like, you didn't do yourself. Danny Ainge didn't do himself any favors with that one, I wouldn't imagine.
No, I saw that quote, and that's like, I mean,
he was joking, but with their history, that's not the type of thing that if you're an NBA executive, you should be joking about on the radio.
No, I mean, that's something to LeBron James. I mean, that's probably one of the worst things that you could say about him publicly. For him,
yeah,
he was probably totally
that's like
irate.
Literally, I think like if you were looking for like top 5 insults to like to go, use on LeBron like publicly, that would probably be number 1 or 2. Like LeBron is, or that would offend LeBron most. Like,
I 100% agree with you. All right, so I guess just to wrap it up, what do you think is the starting lineup for, October of 2019? So 9 months from now, or whatever, 8.5 months from now. What do you think the starting lineup is for the Lakers, realistically?
Man, that's a really good question. That honestly, like, I don't think it's necessarily going to be what people think it's going to be. I'm not sold that they have this like second max guy or even third max guy lined up yet. I think we might see LeBron and like, and the waiting games basically, and like seeing if they can like get in on Anthony Davis at the deadline next year, or like waiting for him in free agency or whatever. Like, I think Davis at this point seems like the most likely star to come still, but and then like Kyrie's maybe on the table too. I don't know, but like I don't know that it's going, and I could be wrong on this. I could look really dumb in like a year, but I don't know that it's going to be as star-studded as people think. And for me, it's hard to predict, because if the Lakers don't get any of those stars, who do they sign? Do they really kick the can down the road again and like sign a bunch of expiring guys? Like, what do they do at that point?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully the Lakers won't have a starting lineup that consists of Trevor Ariza and Marc Gasol as starters, because that could be something.
Oh man, the LeBron and the backup plans.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, that'd be the starting lineup as Ariza, Gasol, Ball, Kuzma, and LeBron. I mean,
yeah, Kobe coming out of retirement off the bench,
and Phil Jackson could be coaching. I mean.
Oh man.
I mean, I'm worried about it too, because I feel like with LeBron, I mean, obviously he's a fantastic player. I mean, people debate how good of a player he is. And I mean, obviously he's a really great player, but there does seem to be a little bit of that aspect of it just seems like whenever he's at a place, there's a lot of drama. There's a lot of, oh, does this star want to play with them or not? And I guess I just don't really know if the narratives, which ones are true and which ones aren't. I mean, I definitely think there is a narrative out there that says that the best players in the league don't want to play with them. And I mean, I think this offseason will kind of prove that a little bit. If Kawhi Leonard and Kyrie and Durant, and if nobody comes to the Lakers because of LeBron, I mean, that to me, it'll seem like that's somewhat true then. But, I mean, I guess...
It would be hard to not take something away from them whiffing completely this summer, especially in LA. So if he doesn't have the excuse of, like, it was hard to get guys to Cleveland, or the books weren't really that clean, or that kind of thing, like, that would be, that would be somewhat of an indictment on LeBron, I think. I do think that some of that stuff, though, with the drama is, like, that's what's going to follow the best player in the NBA, right? Like, I think if Michael Jordan played in today's day and age, there'd be lots of drama surrounding Michael Jordan just because it's just the media climate. It's 24/7. Guys are always being recorded. Things are always online. Like, it used to be that you just you check the paper and that's where the stories of the day would be. And reporters were able to have somewhat of a work-life balance in sports. And now it's just it's a constant 24/7 news cycle. And so there's always going to be drama because people are always looking to feed the content machine.
Yeah. I mean, even guys like in your situation, I mean, you guys, you'll tweet and you'll publish articles, it seems like all times a day. And I mean, it's not like
sometimes when I'm starting up a podcast like this one.
Yeah, and I mean, what you guys are posting, I mean, it's not garbage content at all, but there's so much stuff happening, like you said, every single day that, I mean, you start your day and you're publishing your first article, around 8-ish a.m. in the morning. And, you're watching the Laker game last night that goes to, 10:05 p.m. I mean, that's, we're talking 14 hours worth of posting and, everything like that. So I think you're totally right.
Our site posts on average 7 stories a day throughout the week. So it's less on the weekends and it's more during the weekdays, but it averages out 7 stories a day. 7 stories a day on just the Lakers. Even 15, 20 years ago would have been unimaginable. People would have been how do you write that much on the Lakers? There's stories and we've seen there's an appetite for it. People care about this stuff. And so that's part of it is there's more reporters than ever looking for more stories than ever. So we just hear about more stuff than we've ever heard about before.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're totally right. I mean, it's not it just seems like with basketball, there's just something about it where it just seems so captivating, almost to the point that it seems like the storylines and the drama and everything surrounding basketball or the NBA actually seem like they're more exciting than actually watching the sport itself. I've definitely caught myself in that kind of aspect before of oh my gosh, wouldn't it be awesome if Davis and Klay Thompson both came to Lakers? And I'm thinking about that while the game, there's an actual Laker game going on and I'm not watching the game. I mean, I've totally had those.
Yeah, no, that's a thing. We had our highest traffic day ever yesterday, and almost none of the stories that were going off were about the game. They were all about future stuff, and that's just where it is right now. I think part of that is in Western society, there are approved forms of entertainment for men and women, socially acceptable norms or whatever. And women can watch certain TV shows or reality TV or whatever, keeping up with the Kardashians. This is not a sexist thing. I'm talking about in general across things there's reality TV and sports, and free agency stuff has become reality TV for men. Basically. It's it's a soap opera.
I think you're 100% right. The storylines in certain regards, yeah. I mean, that almost makes it, that makes the major sports in America feel a little bit like the WWE. With WWE, I think what really
sometimes it does feel that way, yeah.
Yeah, and with WWE, what really sold it was, you weren't watching Stone Cold Steve Austin fight Vince McMahon in a vacuum. There was this thing happened and that thing happened, and Vince McMahon did this and Stone Cold did that. So when they fought, it kind of meant a little bit more. Whereas, yeah, and in the NBA too, it's, you hear all these rumors and it's oh my gosh, Kyrie Irving left LeBron and now he's going to come back to LeBron. And what does that mean? And what does it mean that LeBron, shouts out Kyrie Irving in his Instagram post about singing this song, Rewind or whatever? And you're wow, this is really juicy. And then instead, you're the alternative is, you're watching a Laker game and you're Michael Beasley doesn't know how to play the game of basketball. You're watching him play and he's throwing the ball into the other team's hands. And you're just I can't even watch this. I mean, that's how I feel sometimes.
Especially for the last couple of years, I will say, hey, I don't think you're giving Beasley enough credit. First of all, I've actually thought he's been okay this year. Although I can understand for some people, he's not the most fun player to watch just because, he's very isolation basket, although he's become a better playmaker this year. But I think that some of that stuff is, you're just seeing people are just more excited by the storyline than the actual action. For the last couple of years for the Lakers, that's certainly been true, where what is going on off the floor is 100% more exciting than what is going on the floor. And this year they were supposed to finally have a good team that curbs that, but we've seen the look ahead to the future is still it's the Danny Ainge thing. The future is always more exciting than the present because it's the future isn't here yet and it could be anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's crazy that, in the NBA, you do an NBA search on Google for the last couple years, and even though I'm not a huge fan of the Warriors, I think it's very, I don't know, I just find the team very obnoxious, but the headlines in the NBA have really been dominated by future stories and not actually, looking at the Warriors and saying, wow, like look how good this team is or blah blah blah. It seems like most of the headlines have been, where's this guy going to go in free agency, and is this player going to get
People
traded?
have short attention spans. People have short attention spans when they want the new thing. Like the Warriors were the new thing for a while, and then like the novelty of that wore off, and so now people want to know who's going to take the Warriors down. So they're constantly looking for like these free agency, like who's the next super team, where are the Warriors going to go to maybe break this thing up, all that stuff.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. All right, Harrison. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on. How can we follow? Because you have your own Twitter account, and then their Silver Screen and Roll has its own Twitter account, right?
Yes. So my Twitter account is at HMFAIGEN. And so you can follow all of my work there. I post all my work there. And then silverscreenandroll.com is our website. Our Twitter account is at LakersSBN. And then that's the same as our Instagram account. We're like trying to beef that up a little bit now. We have a YouTube channel now. You can search for Silver Screen and Roll and subscribe. That would be great for us. And yeah, so I just, just like follow our work, and we really appreciate that. We're trying to, provide the most like balanced mix of like Lakers basketball coverage like possible. Just from looking at the game, we have like Pete Zayas of Laker Film Room doing videos and like breaking down the X's and O's of everything, and he's really great at that. But then we're also trying to get you your news, your rumors, your analysis, like all of that stuff across. We have a podcast. You could search out Silver Screen and Roll on iTunes, and you get our podcast feed. So we're just really trying to give you the biggest and and most nuanced like Lakers coverage on the internet.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I read your guys' articles quite often, especially too because they show up very often in a Google search. So, I read your guys' articles a lot. I follow you guys on Twitter. And
well, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, no, and I think it's great stuff.
That means that I'm doing my job. Just can you email my bosses and tell them that that's true, that they're showing up a lot in Google searches, because that would be great.
Yeah, no, they are. And I like the stuff you guys produce. I think it's, it's not all fandom, just this or that, or it's not all just, everybody on the Lakers is phenomenal. To me, it seems like it's very measured, and I like it. So,
no, we try to be very centered. Like we are a blog that covers the Lakers. So there's going to be, a slight Lakers slant in the terms of that's mainly what we're covering and that's mainly what we're watching, but we're also trying to give it to you straight. Like we watch the rest of the league. Like all of my like writers are huge basketball fans in general, and we're trying to my background is in journalism. Like we're trying to give you relatively unbiased coverage of the team, or when there is like bias or it's an opinion piece, like it's like this is not just we're throwing hot takes at the wall. It's like I'm pushing everyone at the site. They're pushing me to make sure that we're putting out like the most like honest and like intelligent product we can.
No, that's definitely very good. All right, Harrison. Well, thank you again so much. I appreciate it. I'll let you know when this interview goes live, which will be later tonight. And hopefully between then and now, the trade doesn't actually happen for Davis, and then it'll be totally irrelevant. But
yeah, you got to push this thing out quick before, otherwise it's all going to be irrelevant. We learned that lesson with one of our podcasts the other day. So you gotta go quick.
You're totally right. All right, man. Well, I look forward to talking to you again sometime, and have a good rest of your day.
All right, you too.
All right. Bye.